I'm Eugene O'Day. I'm the West Coast Regional Manager for the Building Solutions team. Here's kind of my Autodesk accolades. So you can see that I do Revit architecture, Revit structure. I have a little bit of MEP knowledge, just enough not to call it MIPS. So I have a couple of videos on that side of things for you. Looks like I have a little thing popping up, so let me get rid of that. So let's go and get started with the presentation here and our agenda. We're going to start off with the platform enhancements. We'll move off to the structural design elements, then the MEP elements, then the architectural, and then time permitting, we'll look at some of the extensions, which I think we'll have some time, and then Q&A at the end to wrap it all up. So first thing I want to talk about here is, do you know about these two particular websites? So we have Ideate Ideas or Revit Ideas and Revit Roadmap. And what those two are, let's get into over here to the products. So the Ideas gets into the Revit forum where you can post your questions and things like that, but you also have the ability to submit your ideas to further the development of Revit and other products as well, but in this case, the Revit side of things. The roadmap gives you a guide into where Autodesk is taking the products. So you can see kind of where their future tools are going to be for the Revit platforms and the CAD platforms and so forth. So these are two great websites to go and make sure that you have links to so you can post your ideas, but also see where Revit is going in the future. So we're getting to the products here. We're going to talk about 2020.1 and 2020.2. And in the .1 release, Autodesk did things in buckets, and the buckets are connect, create, and optimize. And under the connect section is where we have our SketchUp for real supporting on 2019, and they also added the synchronization piece for BIM 360 design. Under create, it's all about structure at this point. It's about the reinforcement constraints, and they added a feature for the precasting. And then under optimize, they added the systems analysis for the MEP side of things. They did some work on the path of travel and architecture, looked at some scheduling features, attaching wall dialog boxes, and exposing the survey and the base point. And in 20.2, we have it set up to be more in line with the kind of the products, if you will. So the platform for everybody, architecture, structure, and MEP. So on the platform side of things, they've exposed the internal origin point. They've released 2.3 of Dynamo. They give us some navigation tools to help better zoom in and zoom out and play around in perspective views. Some more scheduling features. On the architectural side, they did some more work on the path of travel and some work on the BIM 360 side of things. MEP-wise, it was adding rate functionality to the panel schedules. And then over in structure, it was all about Dynamo and steel connections, and I got a window in the way, so I'm going to try to move that out of the way there. So steel connections and Dynamo. So let's go start off with platform. So first thing is the SketchUp Release 2019 support, and if you're using SketchUp to bring that information into Revit and early design, you're going to see some great improvements there. One of the things that we noticed was the material translation over a lot more fluently and better. Row striping is a very nice feature. So basically we now have a button that allows us to stripe the rows, and basically every other row is going to turn into gray. Following that into the 20.2, we now, when we select a row in a schedule, it's going to highlight in blue. And my favorite piece of the scheduling aspect is the ability to freeze our header. And so as we scroll up and down, that header information is going to stay exactly where it is. So how many times have you got a long schedule and you're trying to figure out rows and figure out where things are? Now we have to be able to lock that information down. So let's go take a look at that. There we go. So I have a pretty long schedule, and as I scroll up and down, you can see right away that the header is gone. And all I have to do is hit this little button right here. It says freeze the header, and it'll pop right up, and we're going to get the title and our headers. And so as I scroll up and down, we're going to have that nice little feature there for us. If I were to select a line, oops, it's going to highlight that line in blue. And then if I do striping, what that will allow me to do is give it gray. It doesn't matter if I'm on it or not on it. It's going to be blue whether it's gray or white. Now, as far as the striping goes, or the strips go, that doesn't show up over on the sheets. It only shows up here in the schedule views. So you can see that these kind of features are going to help you work with schedules a little bit more quickly and easily. Our next feature. So we've exposed the survey point and the project base point for linked models. When we link in a model, we're going to see that information over in the site plan. Typically is where we want to see it. So this allows us to quickly coordinate back and forth with our consultants to make sure we're seeing the right things. It's just a great little feature for that. And then on top of that, that was a 20.1 feature. The 0.2 feature is bringing out the internal origin point so we can actually see that internal origin point as well, furthering our collaboration and coordination between the team members. So let's take a look at that. And the first thing I want to do is just bring up a very simple model that I've linked, or that I'm going to link in. And you can see that the project base point's right there, and I've actually turned off the survey point, which is right there as well. So just as a reference, that's what we're going to bring in. So I'm going to start a brand new file, use the architectural template. And then I'll go to the Insert tab. I'll select Link, browse for my link. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to the origin. So we have the center to center, we have internal origin to internal origin, and we also have project base point to project base point. I'm going to use one of the manual options. I'll kind of place it right there. So not knowing where my origin points are, if I pop back over here to the site plan, where it's exposed, there's my project, and there's the link model. It's always going to be turned out gray. So now if I go over to Visibility Graphics and scroll down and open up the site a bit more, there is our points. I'm going to go ahead and just turn off the survey point just so you can see it. You see that they both turn off. So even though it was turned off in the link model, brought it over into my current model, I'm using the hosted information, so I'm going to see that. So I'm going to go ahead and back on. And another little feature that's really, really cool is when you click onto a linked file, and let's say obviously I positioned it wrong, if I right-click, I have an option right here to reposition it to the base point. You can see that snap right back to that base point on top of that. That's just a huge feature for us. Back over here. I'm going to pop into my 3D view here. And I'm going to expose the internal origin point. So I'll go back to Visibility Graphics, scroll back down to the Site option. And you can see there it is right there, internal origin point. Turn that on. And you can see that it's going to show us the X, Y, and Z for that point. And it also shows us the linked model as well. Now this is another cool feature. Again, if I click on my linked model, right-click, I can say reposition to the internal point. Snaps it right back to that location. Awesome feature. Okay, so that's it for the platform side of things. Do we have any questions, Katana, right now?
We do. We have one question. It says, any updates in 2020 related to passing a calculated value to a tag via a shared parameter? Today we have to create two columns. The second is simply a text parameter where we manually copied the calculated value as text.
I'm going to say no. Nothing that I'm aware of in the 2020 version, but let's hold on to that and we'll pass that one off to the team and see if they know a way to do that currently.
One more question I have is the reposition option work for linked AutoCAD files?
I haven't tried the linked AutoCAD file. We'll test it out and we'll get back to you on it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so let's pop over to the structural side of things. So again, in the 20.1 release, it's all about reinforcement and constraints. So they've done some great job here with reinforcement. So think about, when we're dealing with reinforcement as a detailer and things adjust as we grow and the model changes, we're constantly going back and having to readjust and reaffirm our reinforcement when we model it. We now have those constraints that allows us to link that information together. So if things adjust, our constraints are going to hold together our reinforcement. They've also added the fact that we can overlap two bars together side by side with a new constraint called rebar to rebar constraint, allowing us to easily overlap those type of things. Additionally, when it comes to our constraints, they've opened up more visibility, so it's more intuitive to look at our constraints and edit our constraints. We have the ability to use the space bar to cycle through the different types of handles. We can use the shift space bar to go the opposite direction. We can hit an enter when we're finished doing the edits, or escape to get out when we want to discard those changes. And of course, Autodesk realizes that doing all of this modeling in very complex models can really slow down and bog down your system. So they've improved the way that they're dealing with the constraints, so it speeds up our process. So a little one here. The other thing is we can do this stuff in 3D, which is where I'm at right now. So I don't have to be in a section view or elevation view or framing elevation view to do that. I can do it right here. I'm just going to move over to the front view because it's just easier for me in my eyes. And when I go and select this set of reinforcement that's using the maximum spacing, I'm going to go ahead and hit Edit Constraint. Get a little warning because I haven't constrained it yet. And simply, I'm just going to go and just click on that one. It's going to pop over here, give me a dimension. I'm going to go and say, go 6 inches away from that one. And I'm going to go ahead and just click on this one right here. When I click on that, it exposes it. And I'll pop over here and say, let's go to that. And let's go ahead and give this one a -6 inches away from that to constrain it. And then I'll go into screen check it. And now what I have is a model that is constrained. So when I go off and I change anything going about this, like on this particular one here, I start adding more or less. You can see that what it's doing is pushing and pulling and keeping that constraint between those two. So if I go off here and I say, let's make this 10 and make this 1 foot, instead, you can see that it's automatically updating and changing as we go. Now to go back and look at those exposed elements and looking at our different ways of looking at our constraints, if I go back and I select on this one and I hit Edit Constraint, you can see when I click onto it that it has a couple little tooltips here. So this one right here gets into either enable or disabling a two-way constraint, and then this one right here gets into switching between our clear spacing and our bar distance. I'm going to go and click on that one. And I'm going to go and say, let's make that 1 foot. Instead, oops, -1 foot. Mistake. There we go. So we can see there's a difference there. And if I switch it over, then it's 11.5. So toggling between those two makes life a little bit easier and allows us to keep those constraints, effectively helping us save time in editing our reinforcement. In the 20.2 versions, again, like I said, it's all about the steel connections and Dynamo. So if you're not familiar with Dynamo, we'll have a little talk about that a little bit later on. But in this particular one, what this has done is enabled, it has the Autodesk Steel Connect Dynamo package installed when it's the newer version. This gives the ability to read the structural analysis results from either the native Revit analytical tools in the model or using applications such as Autodesk Revit Structural Analysis Professional. This is a nice little feature. The connection information has been around for some time. They've added the steel tab for us over in Structure, and in 2020 they've added some nice feature functionalities for those connectors, and they've taken it a step further with Dynamo, which gives us the ability to load our Connect families from an outside Revit library and or another Revit project. So great little feature and functionality there. And that's what I want to show. I have a video on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and just play that video for you. So right now I'm going to click the connection section. And we don't have any connections in this particular model. So I'm pop my Manage tab. I'm going to pop over to my Dynamo player. And then I'm going to go ahead and basically go load that information. I go to my library for that. And go ahead and play that. So we just loaded all those that information over. So when I go back to my connector, you can see that I now have all of those loaded. So think about the time saving. Where do I go find that connection? We can save that information, reuse that back and forth from one project to another project to another project. So great time saver. All right, so that's it for the structural side of things. Katana, do we have any questions on that?
No, no questions at this time.
Okay, so Katana, I have a question for you. I changed my sound on my mic. Did my voice change lower, or am I still good?
No, you sound good to me.
Cool. All right. Let's get into the MEP side of things. Again, I know enough not to call it MIPS, but I have some great little videos and some functionality for you folks here. So really two options or two things that came across for us. The first one is going to be this MEP Systems Analysis feature. This is just a great little way of going out and getting some good information for us. This is going to follow Insight and some other features for us. So let's go take a look at that one. So the first thing that we want to look at or understand is that it's extending the capability of Autodesk Insight, and it's going to help, and it's going to allow you to use the architectural model as well. So we're using both of that information. So designers can quickly sketch out layouts, define their zones, and even attach preliminary equipment to this information. So once we've got all that done, the designer can use Revit views and scripts. I'm sorry, we can use the analytical model generator to actually create and generate our And then finally, as I talk less than the video goes, we can expose that information through our schedules and reviews to validate our systems and define our connections before the analyze or analytical model begins. And you can see here is a schedule of or report from our analytical model. Okay, and in point 2, it's all about the panel schedule. Now, this is the one sentence I can give you on this particular one for the folks that are electrical, is this is going to allow you to modify your panel schedule in 2 ways. We can modify that in the schedule, or we can modify it in the palette, the properties palette. So great functionality. There's a lot of emails back and forth when this came out from our MEP folks, just really excited about this particular feature. So you can see that right away. I'm going to start interacting with the properties box and start editing information. And as I do so, it's going to update within my panel schedule. Just be picking different things and just changing information. Economically does that for us. So a lot of interaction between here and there. We can get into the actual element, or we can get into the schedule right now. You can see that I'm looking at the schedule, then I pop over to the actual element itself. You can see that we can change a bunch of different things here back and forth from that. We could also change I guess you would call it more like project information within the schedule as well. So not related necessarily to the actual part, but actually to the project. Okay, another stop point there. Katana, any questions?
Yes. Can this be done in MEP model with a linked architectural model?
Say again.
Can this be done in the MEP model with a linked architectural model?
I'm assuming that we were talking about the analyze piece of it, and the answer is yes. So that was actually a linked architectural model. So we're just using that information, gathering that architectural model, 100%.
Okay, and then the next one, if you hit click on the update names, does it undo what you typed in?
That I'd have to check, and that's part of the panel schedule. I'll have to check on that one.
Wonderful, that's it.
Okay. Right, over to the architecture side of things. This is really a platform one, but through my travels around the country, I see most architects using the perspective view versus the structure or the MEP folks, but it's there for you as well if you like that look and feel to it. And the idea behind this one is just more control over viewing or zooming around in that particular view. So we basically have some shortcuts. We have Q, E, W, A, S, and D if you want to use those keys. We have our arrow keys up, down, left, right. And then, of course, we have our mouse with the left click button and the wheel button to be able to fly around, if you will, and zoom around in our perspective views. Tired of the box? You can check it so it doesn't ask us this question again. So they did the same thing when a couple releases back with, I want to say levels, changing the level name and giving you the box you want to do this. So as they go through the different things, they're updating these boxes so we don't have to get these messages again. And so I'll do this a couple different ways here. So just a couple reminders here. This is a perspective view. It says so right there. And you know it's a kind of a camera view, it says it down there. But remember that we can enable different things here. So if I hit the little airplane here, paper airplane, I'm invoking my fly-through button, but it's only kind of contained in my little window right there. So before I do that, what I want to do is down here, I want to not crop my perspective view. So this was created with a camera, and now I actually have the ability to, again, click on my button, start zooming around and playing around. So right now it's just kind of looking, basically standing, looking up and down. I can roll my mouse to zoom in. I can kind of up and down it, pan it over. I can use my arrow keys to get in there. There's a speed control as well as I do that. Just kind of pan around. Once I get done with that look and feel, I can always come back here and crop my view, and it crops it basically back to where that boundary was. So nice functionality there. On the flip side of that, if I go over to an isometric view like this, then I want to create as a perspective view, all I have to do again is come over here to my properties window and switch it over to perspective view. And now I have a perspective view of that. And I can use my typical shift wheel, rotate features, but again, I can go into my fly mode and start flying around the model. My little keys here. Let's go in there. Just kind of push it, drag it down, over, see what people are having for lunch, and therefore. So nice little functionality for zooming around perspective views. In 2020, they came out with this path of travel. And path of travel is, I think, is one of my top 5 features in the 2020 version. And they've increased its functionality in 20.1 and 20.2. In the 20.1 version, they enabled us to see where our obstacles are graphically, so we can see what, when we start doing this, where it's going to run into things. They have also given us great tools to move around our path of travel. It was a tough thing to do in the first release, and now it's a lot easier to do. And they've also given us some from rooms and to room parameters for scheduling purposes, and they've opened up some features for the Dynamo software too, so help automate what we're doing. In the 0.2 release, they've added these things called waypoints. Basically, I can edit the path by adding points to my path and redirecting the path through that way. Everything we've done here will automatically update the links in the schedules within the schedules and the parameters, I should say. All right, so here's the path of travel one that I did on the 2020 version. So what I'm going to do is I want to turn on under the Analyze tab here. I'm going to pop on over here to Review Obstacles. Zoom up onto here, and you can see that everything's kind of orangish, pumpkinish, except for the door, because right now the door is something that I can walk through. These settings are actually part of right here. So I'm going to turn that off a minute, pop back over here to the root, and you can see that the door is something that I have checked that I can basically walk through because there's really a door swing. Now, of course, I would never want to do something like walls, but we also have our height restrictions as well. So we can set up, if I run into this at this height and I run into this at this height, stop me. So now what I did was I said walls. So I go back here and I look, you can see that curtain walls, desks, but not walls. Okay, so you can set up and graphically see what's going on here. Of course, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and check on my walls again. Off. All right. So changing of the path and changing the endpoints, again, was a little more difficult in the first release. What I'd have to do is if I wanted this one to go up to here, I'd pick it, and then I'd use the rotate command to rotate that path, and then use the update to update where the path actually is, and Revit would go off and do that for me. Now it's pretty much straightforward. All we got to do is pick our point. Here we go, and I can grab that and say I want it to go there. And Revit's going to recalculate that information. Same thing over here. I can pick this. I can point it to something else, and it's going to go back and recalculate the path and give us more parameters. Now over here, it's set up to, I have a graphic display and filters to say if a particular path is X amount of distance away from it, change the color. That's something that we had over in the very first release of it in 2020, the wayward points allow me to redirect where we're going. So that's a pretty tight corner. I may want to pull it out, or I want to pull through this door. And let's say that this is a door feature that can only swing open so much. So I want to come around that door. So what I can do is pick on my path and up on the ribbon, hit add a waypoint. I'm going to pick right there. So I just added a point to it. And now I can just pull this point down. Revit's going to redirect that. Now, if I really wanted to go through this and come around this way, I can go back to another point, add a point here, and drag it there, and it goes around to that. So the idea would be if I really wanted this to make it easier to go through that door, because it really should go straight through the door and not through clipping the door, if you will, kind of like some of the ones over here. This might be clipping something. Then you can redirect that path in a more realistic look and feel. But then also we can delete this as well. So if I really don't want that point, I can delete it, and it's going to go through and readjust that path. And that is what we have for the architectural side of things. Any questions there, Katana?
Yes. Can we customize the graphics of these way paths?
In other words, from a dot to something else? It's just a dot right now is all we have to it. So there's not a lot, if I pop back over to Revit, not a lot of the path information we can change. The color for our
line style
obstacles
graphic
is going to be orange. As far as that little dot goes, it's going to be that little dot. As far as the color of the lines go, we can adjust that.
Okay. And does the path of travel work on stairs?
Does it go up the stairs?
Yes, up or downstairs.
No, it's just to the stairs.
Okay.
So it's a linear direction is what it is, I guess. So here's where I'm at, and I need to get to the stairs. How do I do that? And what obstacles are on my way? Yeah, this is, I would say, kind of the second release of that since it came out in 2020. So I would say in the future we'll be able to do more things to it, like getting truly out of the building, more of a 3D aspect. But right now it's just the current view. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right. So let's pop over to our extensions and wrap her up then. So extensions, I put a bunch of things under the extensions, and what I meant by extensions in this case is really not out-of-the-box Revit. So not something that comes with the default install. So first of all, Dynamo is part of the install, but it's a separate piece of it. And if you're not familiar with what Dynamo is, I kind of alluded to, for those CAD folks that know what AutoLisp is, that's a user programming tool in CAD that I don't have to know Visual Basic or anything like that. And this is like that. This is a user programming tool for Revit that allows us to do a lot of different things. Much more powerful than AutoLisp for sure. But the idea behind this is this allows you to customize and automate things that you do over and over and over again, or things that you like. So we've seen a couple of those things today on that structural side of things where you can go outside and pull things in. So they've updated that, a lot more tools for that. So if you're not in Dynamo right now and your firm's not, definitely want to take a look at how Dynamo can streamline some of your processes and some of the features that you do. For those folks that are using the precast installation, again, this is something that we have to install separately after we've installed Revit, and this is part of your subscription, that they have added the double wall feature for the automation. So now we can do some preforming segments on that. We can add reinforcements to that and create shop drawings and export that over to our CAM software. Anybody using BIM 360? And if you are, we have a couple little features for you. So one feature here is they've added I guess we would call this one a notification of syncing, if you will. This used to be part of an older version of the software in the 2018.3 release, and it kind of got obsoleted with the BIM 360 design features that we have. But now we really have kind of two options. We have, is it available to sync, or is somebody synchronizing? So looking at this little button right here, little icon right there, it's available for you to sync. And this tells us that somebody else is syncing right now. And you're going to find that again down here at your options bar. So this helps out in collaboration, so you know that, if somebody else is syncing, you probably don't want to sync because it'll take longer for you to sync or time out. I think that one, other than that one, this one is probably one of my favorite ones. Where is my link model? Is this link model a live link, or is it a consume link where it's going? So now we have the ability to actually show the path. So very straightforward on that one. All we're really doing is browsing out for the file, grabbing it, and pretty much it brings it in. And so up there on our Save Path option, you can see that it's a BIM 360 path, letting you know that either this is live or consumed. Okay. Got through it all pretty quickly here. Do we have any overall questions, Katana? Let's just open it all up.
I don't have any overall questions. No. If we didn't get to your questions today, we will be putting together a blog post for these, and we will have the video available on our Resource Center, and we'll send it over to you as well in an email. And thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks, folks. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and all that. John, you want to hang out for questions for a little bit?